Welcome back to the Skyfall Sessions. Now we're going to go ahead and review a little bit of these swing state voters that has some thoughts to share after the vice presidential election. And we're going to go over the Humanist Report because I really like their take on these voters, and I have some thoughts myself. So let's get into it.
Coming into this debate, I was definitely focused on how trustworthy are the candidates, and I think that's still my main issue.
She's so
and I
lost.
thought this was a great civil debate, and like how trustworthy I think the candidates are grew for both of them, in my opinion.
I think that there's still so many issues at hand with international politics.
It is very important that we have expertise when making these decisions in policy, right?
It was warm and fuzzy. I mean, you could watch it and not be offended.
They said nothing of substance in that opening segment. Wild.
Brace yourselves, my friends, because today we are going to dive into the dense minds of swing state voters who are still undecided. In October, with just 34 days until the election, and we're going to hear what they had to say about last night's vice presidential debate. And just to warn you, this is going to be very depressing, especially because these uninformed imbeciles are going to decide the outcome of the election for all of us, since their votes matter more than ours thanks to our antiquated electoral system. And to add insult to injury, they claim to care about policy, but they offer the most hollow analyses imaginable that is purely vibes-based.
Yeah, it's purely vibes-based. They have no clue what the policy is. It's almost like them coming to this debate or watching the debate was the first time they've ever seen any of the candidates at all. It's quite scary.
I'm not making this up, and I'll show you why that's what they believe in a minute. But I want to start with the insufferable CNN panel that you just heard from, where 7 undecided voters from the state of Michigan, very important state, they watched the debate and just 1 came away decided. So most of them still undecided. Now, as you're going to see,
I don't know how you're still undecided this late in the game outside of being uninformed. It has to be purely that.
They're still undecided because they came away liking both J.D. Vance and Tim Walz more after the debate. So it's so much more difficult for them, and the reason why they like them more is not necessarily because of their policy positions, but because both seemed super duper nice. Case in point.
Oh my gosh, this is if we can't figure out how to operate on policy, then we might as well just go ahead and throw in a towel right now.
So coming into this debate, I was definitely focused on how trustworthy are the candidates, and I think that's still my main issue. And I thought this was a great civil debate, and like how trustworthy I think the candidates are grew for both of them, in my opinion. But the one thing that stuck out to me was Vance's refusal to say whether or not Trump lost the 2020 election, and then also how he kind of said that carbon may not cause climate change, and kind of just his refusal to agree with those things that most people very clearly see makes me think he's not as trustworthy.
It's not just about being trustworthy. He's just not fact-based like a lot of Republicans are. But let's not talk about all Republicans or conservatives. Let's just talk about the ones that are currently running. J.D. Vance and Donald Trump are insane. This is a whole new level of conservatism, of extremism, and that should very clearly sway your vote to the other side.
But I did like a lot of his other policies.
Okay, let's try to parse this out a little bit. She trusts them both more after the debate, even though J.D. Vance wouldn't tell the truth about Trump losing the 2020 election or wouldn't admit the most basic common sense thing ever, that greenhouse gas emissions contribute to climate change.
This is like 3rd grade science, guys. Maybe 4th grade.
But despite this, she now somehow trusts J.D. Vance more, along with Tim Walz, after saying trustworthiness is her main concern.
Which makes absolutely no sense. She's young. She looks very young. It looks like she probably has never seen any of this before at all. She probably has no clue who J.D. Vance is at all until the night of that debate. I am a little bit more willing to give them a pass than he is, but that's all I'll say about that.
And she's still ultimately undecided because she agrees with some of his other policies. Sweetie, what are we doing? What's going on here? First of all,
yeah, what yeah, exactly. What are we doing? What policies do you agree with? Like you didn't point any of that out. You just said that you were concerned about trustworthiness, and then you said he wasn't trustworthy.
Where have you been? Is this the first time that you've heard about Trump or Vance's election
Yes, this is definitely the first time she's ever heard about it.
denialism? Because he's been saying the same shit for 4 fucking years at this point. So are you literally only realizing now that they're denying the result of the last election? Because that's pretty troubling.
It's like one of those things that they kind of heard like in passing and didn't really think about it, and only now they're paying attention to it because the election is close. And to be honest, what's sad is that's probably most voters. Like us talking about this political stuff on podcasts and YouTube videos and stuff like that is probably not the majority of the country. Most people are just now starting to tune in.
Right? That contributes to why you're undecided. But help me understand why it's only standing out to you now. Have you just not known? Have you been living in a cave, just not following it? Why are you now like, oh, wow, seems like he's kind of against the election and might be a threat to democracy? And I'm sorry, what other policies of his do you agree with? Mass deportation to bring down the cost of housing? Does that make sense to you? Trickle down economics? Drill, baby, drill? Why are you
And Vance doesn't even have any policies, which is kind of funny. He's just going along with Trump's policies, which are essentially non-policies.
incapable of making up your mind this late in the game? Even by your own fucking standards, your mind should be made up. But nope, you're still undecided. These are the types of people who are going to decide the election. God damn. Okay, moving on.
Yeah, I feel you, bro. Like I'm on the same page. We are. Everybody's vote matters. Everybody's vote counts, and I think everybody should vote. But I think that more people should be more informed, man. It's kind of scary.
There's another undecided voter, and they liked the moment when Tim Walz said that experts should be making decisions, and he reacted strongly to this during the debate.
Not the like it's not the most like obvious thing ever that we should listen to the experts in any given area.
Which is why the CNN host asked him about it. Here's what he had to say.
Well, it is very important that we have expertise when making these decisions in policy, right? And so him bringing the specifics to say that we need like expertise making these decisions, I believe that was very important, and that in turn made me,
This guy looks like one of those people who thinks that he's smarter than other people because he calls himself independent and says, oh, I don't lean to the left or right. But really, the fact that you're undecided just shows how ignorant you are.
turn my favorability towards him.
So that's what did it? Really? Tim Walz saying we need to listen to experts when it comes to policymaking? That's what made you say, oh, wow, I'm really leaning more towards him now, but still not sure.
Yeah.
Okay. But even though, that random moment from the debate, which was a highlight for me when Tim Walz said we should listen to the experts, admittedly, even though that got him all hot and bothered, he's still not decided. So if that's so important to you, then why not decide to go with the person who...
It's almost like they don't even realize how extreme the other side is. Like the other side, they tried to overthrow the election. They tried to coup the country. This is not a regular election. It shouldn't even be a debate. But here we are with these undecided voters.
Is saying, yeah, maybe let's trust the experts as opposed to not trusting the experts on these complicated matters. I don't know why you're not decided after saying you like that, right? Maybe he wants to hear about Trump's thoughts on expertise. Maybe he needs to know what Trump thinks about this specifically. But my brother in Christ, just admit that you're not really following the election. That's okay.
Right. Yeah, that's really what's going on. Like, I believe most Americans probably are not following the election. They're probably not paying attention to politics. They want to go live their lives, which is, that's just like you said, that's fine. But as a result, you are now looking like a fool talking about, oh, well, I don't know who I'm going to vote for because I am uninformed and I have no clue that one side tried to overthrow the country.
I think it's perfectly understandable. We all have busy lives. It's hard to follow along when there's so much bullshit and so much misinformation. Not everybody can consume politics to the point where their brain has rotted to the point that mine has. But it just feels like you produced a book report there at the last minute, even though it's painfully obvious that you didn't read the material. So I just feel like what you're saying, it reeks of bullshit, but there's more.
There are two main things that I really value about my family and our baby daughter that is being born soon. One is health, and two is time. With health, like I want to be assured that my wife and daughter are going to be healthy and safe. Time, I would love to spend time with my daughter, maybe through a medical leave. But for those two, it would be really unfortunate if I can't afford it in the first place. So any kind of assistance to that and to my family, and to allow me to enjoy the health of my family as well as to spend time with my family would definitely help me this.
If you are thinking about the health of your family, then why don't you go with the party that actually has a healthcare plan in place that currently works? Of course, the ACA isn't the best healthcare plan ever, but it is definitely better than concepts of a plan that Trump claimed that he had during his debate with Kamala Harris.
Side with my vote.
And look, I think that that is perfectly reasonable. If only one of the two candidates last night proposed a $6,000 child tax credit, paid family leave.
Oh, wait. Yeah, that is right. Tim Walz is an actual progressive. What do you know?
The federal level and additional subsidies for the Affordable Care Act. Oh, wait. Tim Walz did do that.
Oh, yeah. And he is a progressive, and progressives do want the things that most Americans actually want, but you guys don't know that because you're purposely being uninformed, and you're going to be the ones that decide the fate of our country. Yay.
He talked about those policies specifically that you say you want, but yet you're still undecided. What? Maybe you don't.
He told you exactly what you wanted, and then you're still undecided.
Actually support the policies you say you support after all, because if you did, you would have already made up your mind after hearing the candidate say, these are the policies I support, and then saying, oh, these are the policies I want. But you're undecided. It feels like you're there because you like feeling important and want both sides to try to woo you. But I promise you, this is it. This is as good.
What he just said is so perfect. Independents just want to feel important. They want to feel important because, ooh, I don't sway to one side or the other, so I am a free thinker. You're not free. You're just ignorant.
Good as it gets. The Democratic Party's position on healthcare is woefully inadequate. They should be supporting Medicare for all, but they don't, but they're better than Republicans. The Republican Party's position is effectively fuck you, die. That's the choice before you. So it's time to make a decision, either shit or get off the pot. If you care about family policies, one candidate articulated what he wants to do clearly, and the other had word salad and bloviated. So I guess
that is true. Don't get me wrong. JD Vance is pretty good at his word salads. I'm not gonna lie. Like he sounds good saying absolutely nothing.
I just find it hard to understand why you're undecided. If you're like, I support policy X, and then a candidate is like, I support policy X, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm still undecided. It doesn't make any sense. You understand why I feel a little bit confused by your position. But I do want to hear from another undecided who says that foreign policy is his main issue.
The biggest thing that I'm still looking at is foreign policy and international relations. Watching the debate today, it was touched on for maybe 6 minutes total, only on the breaking news that was happening in Iran today, or in Israel today, with Iran attacking them. I think that there's still so many issues at hand with international politics, and seeing how our president, or possible president, and our vice president possibility would react to those situations is extremely crucial. Looking at Ukraine and Russia, and looking at China and Taiwan, not just focusing on the attacks today, but kind of looking at...
Okay, so it sounds like this guy actually knows the issues, but just doesn't know the candidate's policies on these issues, which still makes him uninformed. I wonder if he did any research on this beforehand.
International relations as a whole is still probably one of the heaviest part of my decision.
I get it. I mean, they didn't spend nearly as much time talking about foreign policy as they needed to at this debate. But the really good news that I have for this person is that the candidates have talked elsewhere at length about their foreign policy positions. And all it'll take is a mere 30 minutes or so to basically get a quick rundown if you decide to do a little bit of research.
They're too busy playing video games. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like video games too, but I mean, I'll play video games while watching The Young Turks or something.
Right? If you decide to look into the positions on policies that you claim to care a lot about. Sure, it's hard to discern what Trump would do since he's a know-nothing narcissist who makes every international issue about him and it happened because, you know, he's not in power. So I get it that they're not necessarily clear all the time. Politicians use doublespeak, but at this point, you're not going to learn much more than what's already out there, right? You're choosing between who's going to oversee a genocide in Gaza and regional war in the Middle East, and whether or not we will continue to send material support to Ukraine. I think that it's clear where both parties stand. All you
Right. On that, they're both going to do essentially the same thing, except for Trump will probably be worse because he has no idea how to manage anything in the office.
have to do is spend a tiny bit of time researching it. But I mean, you seemingly haven't done that. And now you're like, oh, wait, they didn't talk about this one issue more at this debate. Well, there's more happening than the debate. And again, I understand that it's difficult to pay attention because there's a lot happening. We have lives. But let's cut the bullshit. I don't think you know what you want. None of these people do. They all are full of shit. Okay, that's what I'm saying. Because the entire panel was smitten by how respectful both of the candidates were. And that had no bearing on policy whatsoever. So spare me this bullshit about what policies you purport to support when you're like, oh my God, they're so fucking nice to each other. I mean, listen to this bullshit.
They're nice to each other. That was so frustrating. I mean, they were nice. It wasn't frustrating that they were nice. It's great that they're nice, but it's frustrating that that's what you're talking about and that's what you care about when you're talking about your vote for policy to decide the future of the country when, I repeat, one side tried to overthrow that country.
I haven't seen a debate like this in a very long time. They supported each other. They were kind.
Yes.
And it was warm and fuzzy. I mean, you could
Nothing to
watch
do
it
with
and
policy.
not be offended
Oh, I wasn't
by
offended.
the words they were using towards each other.
It's dangerous to want to walk into a debate about the fate of the country and be seeking to not be offended. I believe that you should be seeking to reach an agree or to reach or convince people of better policy rather than see two people talk nice to one another.
I think to that point, one of the striking things when we were looking at the data in terms of your guys' responses is your favorability for both candidates, regardless of how you viewed them coming into the night, went up significantly. Johannes, why?
So mainly, I think just the way that they did a debate,
Oh, their vibed so well. The way they debated, the way they vibed.
Just mainly that they did an actual debate in front of me. There was not much fear. There was not much hesitancy. They showed their characters to each other in a way.
In a way, that's what you're supposed to do in a debate. You're supposed to show who you are, stand up for your policies, and then convince people that your policies are the correct ones. Obviously, J.D. Vance's are not because his side, again, tried to overthrow the election.
And as was mentioned, they kind of supported each other as they're going within the debate and not attacking each other personally, but more of the policies and then what they stand for.
It is pretty good that they weren't attacking each other personally as much as other candidates do, but at the same time, like I'm cool with a funny personal attack here and there if we can actually get some substantive policy out of them.
I'll be honest, I fucking hate these people. I hate them. Like, what the fuck? You're going to be the deciding voters in this country when you're like, oh, they were so nice to each other. Who cares? I don't.
And what is so sad is that I think obviously they don't represent all undecided voters, but I think a lot of undecided voters have this kind of mindset where they think that they know more than others and they really know a whole lot less.
Give a shit. This right here is everything wrong with American politics, right? As long as both sides are getting along and the fascist who's threatening mass deportation is polite and respectable, then everything is copacetic. Yay! I mean, this is how so many people, including liberals, end up supporting policies against their own self-interest. For example, with liberals, they're now supporting Republican policies because it's being proposed by a Democrat, right? Albeit without the bombastic demagoguery. It's more digestible because the candidate who is saying they support this terrible thing is saying it nicely. Case in point, the Republican border bill that Harris and Walz continued to push. This bill is illegal to hear asylum claims, but the bill would shut down the border and in turn shut down due process for people if some arbitrary threshold is crossed. That's not supposed to happen, but yet they're saying we support this as if it's a good thing and not something that they should be ashamed of, right? So we need to be able to cut through the bullshit and obfuscation and differentiate between policies and platitudes.
The reality is that they don't know what's going on at all. That's the thing. They're just ignorant. They literally have no clue what the other people's policies are. when you have people that bloviate about their policies or they're untruthful, then it makes it that much more confusing. Like, ignorance is such a curse on the American people.
And certainly nobody in this fucking panel was able to do that, but I think that they're a microcosm of a broader issue in this country. It feels like Americans would let the government subject everybody to cock and ball torture so long as both parties politely agreed that it was the correct course of action. But at the same time, we're also hyperpolarized, so it just doesn't really make sense. And if you're an international viewer struggling to follow along and try to understand what makes us tick, we're all confused. Nobody knows. We don't even know ourselves, right? It doesn't make any sense. Now, up until this point, I haven't actually told you who the one voter is that actually made up their fucking minds after watching the debate. And I'm going to have a little bit of criticism of this person, but I won't be as mean since he actually is making up his mind. But first, let's hear his reasoning.
Wait, somebody actually made up their mind? Wow.
All 7 of you came in undecided. One of you said they've made up their mind. Ryan, who are you going to vote for, and what kind of solidified that opinion?
Well, I'm going to be voting for Kamala Harris. You know, one of the stark sort of aspects of that debate that really stuck with me was when they were talking about January 6th and how Mike Pence certified the election, and they were wondering if J.D. Vance would certify the election should Trump lose. And, you know, J.D. Vance didn't really give us a definitive answer.
That's a damning non-answer.
And I'm disappointed in that fact. And I don't think that I can trust someone, you know, with my vote if they're not going to respect it.
You did it. You did it, sir. You actually made up your goddamn mind. Sincerely, thank you.
Yes, please. Thank you. This is what we need. We need people to like have a brain. He showed that he had a brain. It's not rocket science. All you have to do is listen to what the people are saying, see if they align with what you want, and then choose to vote for that person. It's not that hard at all.
Turns out the threat to democracy that J.D. Vance poses is what helped him decide. Now, I'm not going to be mean because he actually came to a conclusion about what he's going to do, but I could blow your mind about some of the shit that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance have said over the course of the last 4 years, but I'm not going to nitpick because you're no longer undecided. But I am wondering if you I'm trying not to be a prick, but I am wondering if you decided to just tune in like now, right? It's a little bit weird that you're like, oh, they're a threat to democracy.
Yeah. He definitely just tuned in. He wasn't paying attention at all.
Only now. Having said that, though, I still applaud you because you set standards and then you made a decision based on your own observations and standards. That is what you are supposed to do. But yet, 6 of the other people did not do the same thing. And what's
so scary is that if you want to call this a sample size, which it's not it's not a statistical sample size, but if you wanted to, those 6 people would represent most people who are going to the polls literally not knowing who they're going to vote for, and then you'll check the box. I mean, if we have a lot of those, hey, look, things can go in the wrong direction.
So worrying about that is this election is so close, and it could ultimately come down to the vibes each campaign is putting out, like literally. It's worrying because, you know, even if Trump loses this election, someday a polite, charming fascist could roll this fucking country by weaponizing our own gullibility against us.
And those implications are so true. I want to end it right there, just because I wanted to focus on those voters. Listen, people, if you can, please listen to the issues, do some research, and then figure out which issues align with you and vote for that person. And again, remember, one side tried to overthrow the country. Anyways, check you guys out next time. This is Skyfall Sessions. Please like and subscribe. Brand new channel, trying to get some more content out. So I've been pushing out a lot in a short period of time. So if you can, help me grow the channel. Thank you very much.